Welcome back to Marketing on Point, the podcast that helps you connect, convert, and stand out online. I am your host, Matt Hadley, founder of Wander Creative, and today we're talking about one of the most important, but honestly one of the most overlooked tools in marketing, and that's the strategy doc. In our last episode, we unpacked vanity metrics versus value metrics and how to measure impact in ways that actually matter. But once you know what to measure, the next question becomes, how do you actually build a plan that gets you there? And that's where the strategy document comes in. It's not just a vague planning document. It's more of kind of your roadmap that's going to connect your goals to your execution. It's really how you move from just guessing and scrambling to showing up with clarity and consistency. So today, I'm going to walk you through exactly what goes into a strategy document, how to build one for your own brand, and how to use it so your marketing stops feeling reactive and starts moving the needle. Welcome to Marketing on Point, the podcast where strategy meets clarity. Every episode, we break down real-world strategies, stories, and impactful tactics to help you grow your brand. Let's dive in. One thing that I've noticed is that most brands don't struggle with creativity as much as you might think. Where they do struggle more often is with clarity. They just post randomly. They launch campaigns without any type of alignment. They spend money on ads with no true North Star. It's kind of like getting into a car and driving across the country without a GPS. Yes, you're going to move, but you probably aren't going to know if you're heading in the right direction or if you're ultimately getting closer or further away from your destination. And I think that that's where most businesses find themselves in. They are in motion, but not necessarily in momentum. And the strategy document solves this problem by giving you a very clear roadmap. It says, here's where you're going. Here's who you're talking to. Here's what you're saying. And here's how you'll even know if it's working or not. Without a strategy document, your marketing, it's probably going to be a little bit like guesswork or kind of just scattered. But with it, it's going to bring clarity. It's going to bring focus, and it's going to give you actionable items to be working towards. So let's get practical for a second. If you are building out a strategy doc, there really are 6 sections that should be inside every single one. The first section is going to be your goals and objectives for this season. We always like to look at kind of the short term, the near term, and the far term. The short term is really just that quarter that's coming up, the next 90 days. The near term is really what's happening in the next 12 to 18 months. And the long term is really what's going on in the next 3 to 5 years. So once we have an idea of where we want to go long term, we then can bring it back to this strategy doc is really pertaining to the next 12 to 18 months and those goals, but even more specifically, what are we doing in the next 90 days to start to work towards and achieve the goals that we want in the next year. So when we chart out what the goals and objectives are for this season, for most likely this quarter, we want to know and track what are we trying to accomplish. We want to be specific with it. Is it that we want 30% more leads in the next 90 days? Is it that we want to grow the email list by X number in the next 6 weeks? Do we want to sell a certain amount of tickets to a webinar or even like a live event? Do we want to move a certain amount of product? We want to be very specific and also very time bound in these metrics so that we have a lot of clarity and a lot of certainty. Because when you have clarity in this moment, in this foundational stage, that really sets the tone for everything else to come. The second piece of the strategy doc that I want you to make sure that you aren't overlooking is your audience. Answer the questions of who are you trying to reach? And by that, I want you to go deeper than just age and location. I want you to think about what motivates them, what keeps them up at night, what do they want that your product can actually solve? Once you've really figured out who that audience is, both from a kind of high level demographic bracket, but then also that more meaty, what motivates them, then I want you to put together messaging pillars to talk to that audience to also then meet those objectives from part one. So the third part is really the messaging pillars. That is going to be 3 to 5 big themes that your content will always come back to. Think of these as kind of your brand's talking points. Maybe it's authority, maybe it's inspiration, maybe it's product education. If your content doesn't tie into one of your core pillars, then it probably shouldn't get posted. The fourth thing is really the content calendar or the content cadence. This is where you're going to write down how often are you posting, what platforms are you posting to. This is really going to start to remove the what should we post today kind of panic. If you know your cadence is I need to post 3 times to Instagram this week, 2 times to TikTok, and get 1 email out this week, then once you have that written out, you can start to take it in bite-sized chunks and work your way through that content calendar. The fifth thing is really think through high-level campaigns and activations. These are going to be the big pushes that really sit on top of your regular content. Maybe it's a product launch, maybe it's an event, maybe it's a seasonal promotion. These are the things that really keep you proactive and really thinking high level instead of being reactive. The sixth and final thing that I want to make sure is included in your strategy doc is key performance indicators or KPIs and benchmarks. This is where we're going to really set how are we measuring success. Is it through on social media getting saves or shares? Is it through click-throughs to the website? Is it actual conversions or true ROI? Whatever your goal or whatever your objective might be in this season, write it down, because if you don't define your goals in advance, you're going to start to find yourself moving the goalpost every couple of months. And then you'll never know if you're actually winning or not. And that is those 6 things. If you do those and if you put those pieces together to make up the skeleton of every strategy doc, that's going to bring structure, that's going to bring clarity, and that's going to bring focus to your brand. And that's really what we put inside every single one. I want to take a quick break, but after the break, I'm going to show you how we actually use this document in practice with our clients, not just as a deliverable, but as a living roadmap that drives execution week after week. So stick around. All right, now let's talk about how to actually use the strategy doc. At Wander, we treat it like a living roadmap. Every quarter we update it because goals change, campaigns shift, new priorities might emerge. And so every doc that we create for ourselves and for our clients, we treat as a living organism. It evolves with the brand. We do have the things that we've set out for the next 12 months. We have the things that we've set out for the next 3 to 5 years that are less likely to change unless something cataclysmic happens. But the things that we're looking at every quarter are the more granular things of how we are marching towards that. What has changed in the last 90 days to where our goals need to shift or our priorities need to shift so that we then can keep on pace and on cadence to our long-term goals. So really, we're kind of taking each of those strategy docs, and every week we're referencing it. We are letting that guide us and let that drive what gets created and posted to social media, what campaigns happen, what really gets prioritized. It is really that anchor that eliminates any guesswork moving forward. There's no more of the what should we post today, because the document, we already did the hard, heavy lifting when we put this document together. And so if we look at that, it gives us the direction. It tells us where we need to go. It's also, we've found that strategy docs are extremely collaborative and invite collaboration, not just internally amongst the team, but also externally with the clients. The clients see it, our team uses it, and it allows us all to stay truly aligned. And that alignment is very powerful, because when everyone knows why we are doing what we are doing, then executing on that really does become very consistent and purposeful. I'll give you a real world example real quick. One of our clients, when they first came to us, they already actually had great content. They had beautiful photos. They had really engaging videos, but there was no system to what they were doing. And so they had just gone through an entire brand refresh. They like I said, they had strong visuals. Even their brand story was pretty clear. But the execution on all of that was so scattered because there was nothing holding it and bringing it all in alignment. And so once we built their strategy doc, everything kind of just fell in line. They went from very sporadic posts to a consistent rhythm. And within 1 quarter, their engagement grew, their traffic climbed, and they actually had 40% more sales conversions than they had previously. And that's not necessarily because the content was better, but it was really just because everything finally was aligned. Everything was working in harmony and unison. And that is the difference that a strategy doc makes. It works because it removes the guesswork. It turns marketing from reactive, what do we post, into something that's more proactive. Here's the system, here's the plan, here's how it connects to our goals. It also makes ROI more measurable. Because when you know what your objectives are, when you know what your KPIs are, you can actually prove progress, or you can pivot and make changes to align and actually start moving you closer to those objectives. It also builds trust. It builds trust with your team because they know what they're executing. It builds trust within your leadership because they can see the plan, or even your client because they can see the plan. It also builds trust with your audience because you show up consistently. And so here's my challenge to you. I want you to take 30 minutes this week. It doesn't have to be this long, drawn out, 3-hour strategy session. Just do 30 minutes and build a simple framework for a strategy doc. Just write down some goals, write down who your audience is, write down your messaging pillars and even the cadence that you want to be posting online. And then think through the campaigns that you want to do between now and the end of the year, and even some of the objectives that you want to hit, or the goals that you want to hit between now and the end of December. Again, just do it fast, do it quick. It doesn't have to be perfect. Once you get it out of your head and onto paper, though, you'll start to see how much clarity even that step brings, and how much clarity that continuing on that path can really bring. The strategy doc, if you really start to think of it as your roadmap, it takes your goals and it turns them into execution that you can trust. And even if you want to see what one of these looks like in action, just reach out. I'm happy to even share you wanders and how this podcast fits into that strategy doc, and how the things that we're doing on social media fits into that, and what we're doing on email, and how all of that comes together. The strategy doc, even within the clients that we serve, it's really the first step. It's really the foundation in every flagship service that we offer. We start with a strategy doc. We start with sitting down with our team internally, and then also the clients as well, to figure out what are the priorities, what is the strategy to get to those priorities, and how do we execute on that so that we're not just making noise. Anyway, that's all I've got for you today. Thank you so much for listening to Marketing on Point. I don't want you to miss next week's episode. We're actually going to take a little bit of a different approach. We're going to be breaking down Liquid Death's Pure Sugar campaign that they did back in 2023. And even though we didn't necessarily have anything to do with this campaign, we have learned a lot internally by it, just by analyzing it. And so I want to look at that, pull that, dissect it a little bit, and see how it can teach us in your brand today. So again, I'm Matt Hadley. Thank you again so much for joining us, and I will see you next time. Thanks for listening to Marketing on Point. This podcast is all about helping you show up with clarity, connect with the right audience, and build a brand that actually grows. It's brought to you by Wander Creative, your full service partner for strategy, content, and execution that moves people. If this episode helped you think differently, do us a favor, subscribe, share it with a friend, and leave a quick review. It helps more people discover the show and build brands that actually make an impact. We'll see you next time.